Ridiculous.
Ridiculous, but I bet it was for a significant amount of money.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, but fun. I'd watch it. Look, Jake Paul wants to test himself against actual, not just world champion, but one of the greatest of all time.
Really fought, and it wasn't fixed, Jake Paul would not survive 45 seconds.
I don't know about that. I think it would take a few rounds.
Really?
But yeah. First of all, Jake is a lot bigger. Jake's a lot bigger.
But what weight would they fight?
Well,
it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my what I'm looking at right now.
Joe Rogan was left shocked after learning that Jake Paul had offered Francis Ngannou a fight, following the cancellation of his bout with Gervonta Davis. On his podcast, Rogan called the idea crazy and almost reckless for Jake, who went from YouTuber to boxer in just a few years. Rogan explained that Ngannou, a former UFC powerhouse, is one of the hardest hitters in all of combat sports, and he questioned whether Jake truly understood the danger he'd be stepping into. Still, Rogan admitted that if the fight ever happened, it would be a massive event that would draw huge attention worldwide.
Nikista calls Francis. This is Francis telling the story. Nikista calls Francis and says, hey, we need your help. We need an opponent for Jake. Tank is out. And Francis says, all right. And Francis says, well, how can I help you? Nikista says, well, we're looking at an opponent for Jake. Tank Davis is out. And Francis says, all right, but specifically, how can I help you? Nikista takes a third swing at the bat. He says, well, we need an opponent. We need a boxer. We need a partner. We need somebody to fight Jake. Tank is out. And Francis asks him again, okay, what specific...
When Jake Paul's scheduled exhibition with Gervonta Davis fell apart due to serious legal issues surrounding Davis, Jake and his team immediately began searching for a new opponent. One of the names brought up was Francis Ngannou, the former UFC heavyweight champion who recently crossed into boxing. Known for his incredible size, knockout power, and fame, Ngannou is considered one of the most dangerous fighters in the world, making his name alone enough to shake up the boxing scene.
Saga, I think the fight is going to be completely canceled and rescheduled, and now we have potential opponent names and some people being ruled out coming into today. This is not a joke. It was said by Mike Coppinger and others that the #1 candidate to replace Tank Davis in a Jake Paul fight, probably on a different date, was going to be Francis Ngannou. What the f? But we have an update on that and other potential names that Jake could fight. Again, I think on a separate date, and why I think the Jake and Tank fight is completely off. No more, maybe, no more, we don't think it'll happen.
Michael Bisping commented on the wild size difference between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou, pointing out how Jake's original opponent, Gervonta Davis, is a much smaller lightweight fighter. Bisping said moving from Davis to Ngannou puts Jake at the complete opposite end of the physical spectrum. He explained that such a shift isn't just about facing a bigger man. It's about facing someone with an enormous advantage in mass, reach, and raw power. According to Bisping, that kind of jump creates a mismatch not only in skill, but in pure physical threat.
Like Mike Tyson, who's 58, Anderson Silva, who was way past his prime, people like Nate Diaz, who were way smaller. Gervonta Davis really did take the piss. I mean, that was just the craziest shout ever. To go from fighting Gervonta Davis, way smaller, to now fighting boxing Francis Ngannou. I mean, listen, if he does it, fair play. But I just call #1 bullshit on this brother, because I don't see this happening. No.
This is #1 bullshit.
I just don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. Nate Diaz, yeah, 100%. I mean, he beat him once already. I'm sure Nate Diaz would love to get another big payday, because obviously boxing on Netflix and going up against Jake Paul, given his success, given the name that he has, and given the magnitude of his events, Nate Diaz will get paid an absolute fortune once again. We know that it wasn't too long ago Jake Paul was talking about boxing Anthony Joshua, and that never came to fruition. There's absolutely no way he would box Anthony Joshua. If he did, if he was to do something like that, whether it be Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou, I'd give him his props. I'd give him his credit. And you never know. Maybe he would do it just for the clout, because in many ways it would be, sorry about the airport notifications, it would be, an admirable thing to do, and it would be Jake Paul taking on somebody bigger.
According to Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul's team contacting him as a possible replacement for Gervonta Davis completely surprised him. He said the offer came out of nowhere and didn't fit with his current career goals. While money was mentioned in the talks, Ngannou made it clear that he turned it down because the proposal simply didn't make sense. He questioned how going from a lightweight like Davis to a heavyweight like himself could even be considered logical. For Ngannou, it wasn't about the paycheck. It was about whether the fight made professional sense, and this one didn't.
Like Jake to replace Gervonta, I'm like, who's Jake? I was so confused, I wasn't expecting that at all. And he said, yeah, Jake Paul, he's fighting. And I'm like, no, bro, come on. Don't disrespect me like that. And then they even say they even come out after and say, and what if the number are good? He sent out some number. I'm like, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. He make no sense for me. It's not my
Former UFC champion Daniel Cormier gave Jake Paul a very direct warning about what could happen if he actually fought Francis Ngannou. Cormier said Ngannou's destructive power and years of experience make this fight extremely dangerous. He argued that Jake isn't ready, physically or mentally, to handle punches from a heavyweight who built his name in mixed martial arts. Cormier made it clear, this fight isn't about fame or money. It's about survival, and in this case, the risk far outweighs the reward.
All goes from fighting Gervonta Davis to calling out Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul don't want those problems. I can't say it any different. Jake Paul does not want any Francis Ngannou problems. He don't. He does not want those issues. While I think it's crazy and I credit him for doing that, and I'm surprised he did that, this could be a ploy. Him poking out his chest, saying, I want Francis. He don't want those Francis Ngannou problems. I don't care what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul gets in there with Francis. Francis will knock his head off this planet. You don't want those Francis problems. I watched Francis put down Tyson Fury. Sure, Anthony Joshua beat him. But even if Jake got power, I don't think he got power to be dealing with Francis. Because all it takes is for one.
Cormier also questioned Jake's real intentions, suggesting that this challenge might be more about publicity than genuine competition. He said Jake doesn't fully understand what it means to fight a true heavyweight, someone who can literally punch through gloves. Cormier reminded everyone that in MMA, Ngannou's power is legendary, but in boxing, that power becomes even more focused. He warned that if Jake steps into the ring with Ngannou without realizing the difference between MMA striking and boxing defense, the fight could end very quickly, maybe even in the first few minutes.
Right? Boxing is much different than mixed martial arts. The target audience might be the same, but the demographics different. The places where people are brought up are different. There's bigger entourages in boxing. It's just a different world in boxing. We've known that from the very beginning. We know that Gervonta Davis was not going to just play to Jake Paul's rules. I still don't know exactly why this thing is falling apart, but it is falling apart bad. It is bursting at the seams. We are almost exactly where we should have never started. This should have never gotten started. But it did. But we are almost now exactly where we need to be in the fight, and that's...
Several fight analysts have also described the idea of Jake Paul fighting Francis Ngannou on such short notice as extremely risky, not only for Jake, but for the sport's credibility. They pointed out that Jake's original opponent, Gervonta Davis, pulled out at the last moment, forcing Jake's camp to scramble and approach Ngannou. But as Ngannou himself said, taking a fight this suddenly doesn't align with his plans or preparation. Strategically, it makes no sense for Jake either. Facing a heavyweight like Ngannou without months of training would be almost impossible. Experts compared the idea to the time Tyson Fury fought Ngannou, another crossover event that shocked fans. Even Fury, the heavyweight champion, admitted Ngannou made it one of the hardest fights of his career. Analysts believe a Jake Paul vs. Francis Ngannou match would follow a similar pattern. More about spectacle and crossover attention than real boxing competition.
About this is, okay, if they push it back to December, then that's slightly different. But this is the kind of one situation where you're kind of 10 days out, 2 weeks out from a fight, whenever they first got wind of this problem. This is the kind of situation where it would be possible that Jake Paul and Nikita Badarian and MVP, who are very, very shrewd people, this is the one occasion where they might end up making a mistake and taking someone at short notice who they shouldn't take. Because there'd be a whole raft of people putting their hand up for it, wouldn't they? Thinking, I'll take him at short notice. I'll make out that I've been sitting on a beach eating and drinking for the last 6 months. I'll but anything just to get in there with him. And then on the night, I'm gonna knock his head off. There'll be loads of people putting their hand up for this. And you'd have to be incredibly careful about who you took at short notice, because for it to have any kind of meaning, you would need to take a decent opponent at short notice, because obviously they're up against it because it's short notice. You couldn't take some barely warm body at short notice, because that would be even worse than giving them full notice. So this is the one area, the one situation in which it would be easy for them to make a mistake, but they don't make mistakes with things like this. They just don't. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't been tempted into, somebody. Yeah, Ngannou, that'd be a mistake. It'd be such a mistake. I know he got flattened by Joshua, but so what? Joshua is a 2-time unified champion of the world, and Ngannou's 270 pounds of absolute granite. That would have been a terrible, terrible mistake if they'd given him the fight.
And he dropped people. I know, my opinion, Tyson Fury won that fight with Ngannou, but he still put Tyson Fury.
He was close.
Chael Sonnen also shared his thoughts on the potential Jake Paul versus Francis Ngannou matchup, with a mix of humor and genuine interest. He said that from a pure sporting perspective, it's not a balanced contest. It's more like a test to see how much punishment Jake can take. Sonnen reminded his audience that when Ngannou fought Tyson Fury, even a world-class heavyweight with size and skill was knocked down by one clean shot. So if Fury struggled to handle Ngannou's power, the idea that Jake Paul, who's much smaller, could survive those same punches sounds unrealistic.
This says fighting Jake Paul wouldn't make sense. What in the hell do you think Tyson Fury got for boxing you? These aren't mean things for me. This is a reality. Tyson Fury knew there was a check. Name one person you'd rather see Jake Paul fight than Francis Ngannou. Is a real challenge. How Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, Anderson Silva, Mike Tyson, how those aren't real challenges, I don't know. But this is the story as we're told. And do you see where that would satisfy so much? Do you see where that would force even the biggest hater to be quiet? And my job for something to make sense is the biggest check against the easiest opponent. I cannot think of anything I would rather see Jake
Paul has built his name on big promotions and headline-grabbing fights, but this one seems to have missed the mark. Unlike his previous opponents, who were closer to his size and experience level, Francis Ngannou represents a totally different challenge, one that many fans see as unbalanced and unnecessary. Some observers believe Jake's attempt to stay relevant by chasing shocking matchups is finally wearing thin. This could explain why ticket sales and public interest haven't picked up, even after weeks of interviews and advertising. To many, it feels more like a publicity stunt than a real competition.
And he's retired. Tank still being in the competitive nature of the sport throws this one completely off for me. And the fact that Jake is like 60 pounds bigger than he is, right? Like, Mike was obviously far older than Jake, and that was the big knock on that fight. Mike should not have been in there with Jake. Said that many times. Jake has fought so hard against people saying he's bad for the sport. He's bad for the sport. He doesn't actually want to fight or step up or do any of this stuff. And I've kind of had his back when I'm like, no, he is doing what most boxers have done early in their career. But this gives those people more ammo to be like, yeah, bro, look, this is what we're talking about. When we say he's bad for the sport, or when we say that he's doing stuff that doesn't make sense and he's making a mockery of things, this is what they're talking about. And again, I wouldn't have any problem with it if Tank was way past the point where he could fight competitively at his weight class and have fights with guys like Shakur Stevens, or even, again, rematching guys like
Chael Sonnen added that while Jake Paul's confidence and willingness to fight anyone are entertaining, facing Francis Ngannou is another matter entirely. He pointed out that Jake doesn't have the size, strength, or chin that Tyson Fury does, and if Fury could barely take one of Ngannou's punches, it's hard to imagine Jake surviving even a single clean shot.
Bludgeoning. You can't even grab a hold of the guy or try to squeeze him. You can only bludgeon and be bludgeoned back. I think you're got an uphill battle to question somebody. But they have been very effective in doing just that to Jake. Hey, you start with this NBA guy, and then even those MMA guys, they're not boxers. And then when you got around to the boxers, but they weren't current boxers. Then when you get around to the current boxers, they're not big enough boxers. And I just loved it. When I heard that Francis Ngannou might be going against Jake, I loved it. I mean, what's that gonna look like? How many of those shots from Francis can you take? Tyson Fury, if you're talking clean, Tyson Fury only took one. Everything else, Tyson was able to roll with. Big Francis only had to hit him one time.
Tim Bradley also spoke about the wider fallout from the cancellation of the planned Gervonta Davis vs. Jake Paul fight. He explained that the collapse of the deal affected far more people than just the two fighters. Promoters, sponsors, venues, and networks all lost money when the event fell apart. The fight was expected to generate huge pay-per-view numbers and sponsorship deals. But once Davis's legal problems surfaced, broadcasters and brands pulled away to protect their image.
Get on Tank real quick. You gotta be the dumbest dude, in the history of boxing, bro. $40 million, dog, down the drain. You gotta be the dumbest dude I've ever seen in the history of boxing, bro. Seriously. I'm like, $40 million, bro. Wealth. Literally wealth, bro. Going down the drain. I don't understand it. I can't make the... I don't understand it. But I'll tell you this. MVP promotions, whatever the hell y'all call it, most valuable promotions, shit, more like rookie promotions. Yeah, more like rookie promotions. You didn't know what you were dealing with. You had no clue. This has always been down Tank's alley, man. Now, let me just say one thing.
Bradley went on to explain that money had already been spent on production, promotion, and logistics, funds that likely won't be recovered. He said this situation exposes just how fragile the business side of boxing really is. When one fighter's reputation takes a hit, everyone involved ends up paying the price. He also highlighted how a possible Jake Paul versus Francis Ngannou showdown would be unlike anything Jake has faced before. Ngannou, weighing around 260 lbs, brings the kind of raw strength that can change a fight with one punch. Jake, on the other hand, has built his success on speed, movement, and entertainment, not on fighting for survival. To compete at all, Jake would need a total transformation in his training, gaining muscle, improving endurance, and rethinking his sparring and conditioning. What works against smaller fighters won't help against a heavyweight like Ngannou. Analysts agree. If Jake treats this as just another influencer boxing event, he'll be in serious trouble. He'd need months of top-level preparation to make this fight even remotely competitive.
Be something unique. It would be something incredible. It's the same reason that I would be intrigued by a Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight, although I would never advise Jake Paul to take a Anthony Joshua fight. I wouldn't advise him to take a Francis Ngannou fight either, because as much as Anthony is far better, which we saw when they actually fought, Joshua slept Francis Ngannou quicker than me after 2 melatonin. I mean, it was Quick, fast, in a hurry, completely dominant. But we also saw Francis Ngannou go toe-to-toe with the heavyweight champion of the world at that time. Yes, he was out of shape. We understand that. But Tyson Fury on that night got the shock of his life when Francis Ngannou not only went toe-to-toe, but put him down and danced on him. To this day, I think that fight could have gone Francis' way. Point being, there are levels to this shit. Not just in boxing, but in combat in general. And the size difference Francis would have over Jake would be incredible, but it would have been a great event, and a lot of people would have tuned in. Francis, though, is saying that's not happening.
How can they go from like Gervonta Davis to Francis Ngannou? Like, I mean, Gervonta Davis is a fantastic boxer, but and is a one-shot knockout artist. But come on, like the weight different and everything, it makes no sense.
It's a good point. I mean, obviously, Francis is right about the weight difference, but it's a good point in general for what do you do next? Jake has sparred guys like Shakur Stevenson, Ray Ford, Montana Love to try to prepare for Tank Davis. And even if you book this fight on December 12th or December 19th, that's still a completely different fight than you were going into. Completely different matchup, size-wise, skill-wise, the things that you're going to need to even try to compete if it's...
So, what do you think? Is this matchup an exciting high-risk challenge or a dangerous mismatch that should never happen? Share your thoughts in the comments below.